In episode number 361 of the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, we cover the box office estimates for the Joker movie.
And we were all a little bit nervous, but it turns out that Greg Capullo has re-signed on with DC.
And our comic book highlight this week is No One Left to Fight number 2.
All of this and so much more on today's episode.
Hello and welcome to the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week, ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I am your almighty emperor, Kelli.
And this week I am super nerd Daniel.
Super nerd.
You were making fun of me when I told you that.
I was. You read it and you were like, no.
You get to be an emperor this week. I get to be a nerd.
I get to be an emperor every week. It's not just this week. This is who I am, Daniel. And I guess who you are is a super nerd.
Well, to anyone new to the podcast, the way we break down the show is first we go through some news. We head into our Patreon shout-outs of the week. Those are our thank yous for everyone that make the show possible. We go into our comic book review, and then we end it with the Brocat block, which is where Kelli and I have been this week.
But starting off our news with some stuff on the big screen, and an attempt to explain Godzilla King of the Monsters' lower box office returns, Forbes published an article explaining that audiences have hit monster fatigue.
It's tough explaining why King of the Monsters did not do as well as they expected, as well as we expected that sequel to do. 2014's Godzilla did awesome. But there was a 5-year gap between the two movies, and Forbes has outlined that during that gap, you had Jurassic World, you had the sequel, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, but also Pacific Rim 2 and Kong Skull Island, all in that 5-year period. So they're suspecting that people got their fill of monster fights, and that impact of King of the Monsters was lessened because we had these 4 big movies. Well, 2 of them were huge. 2 did all right.
No, I don't think that's it, because I would still go and watch a monster movie right now.
Is this the best explanation as to why it didn't do as well?
This is an explanation about why it might not have done well.
Do you have another explanation?
Yeah, people are stupid.
I think it's just that it's the 5-year gap. They had waited a little bit too long between this sequel and the last one to where it wasn't in people's minds anymore, really. 5 years for a movie sequel is kind of a long time. You see it right now with even Jurassic World, the superhero movies. They don't wait long before they come out with a sequel.
Right.
And for Godzilla, clearly it was a part of the plan. The director to 2014's even put up an Instagram post of an original deleted scene in the post-credits where it would have shown the twins as kids, as babies, putting their hands up to an egg. And that would have been their lead up to them hinting at Mothra being in the sequel. Well, they cut that out, and I don't know if that was as a way for them to maybe hold off on whether or not there is going to be a sequel. I'm not too sure why that gap was so large between the first and the second one.
I think part of the issue, too, was all the negative reviews that it had gotten of people saying, oh, well, there's too much monsters and not enough people, or whatever the hell they were saying.
You're talking about King of the Monsters?
Yes. Yeah, King of the Monsters. So I think that deterred a lot of people, too. One, because, okay, again, you waited so long, there wasn't that much hype, but now you're hearing, oh, well, it's not really that great, right? Let's go see Avengers again, or whatever the hell they were watching at that time.
And people are very susceptible to, well, I haven't heard good things about it. And that does keep people at bay from going to the movies and seeing these things. You see that more recently, there was the Shazam movie even, which it got positive reviews, but at first it was quote unquote mixed. Even though there was similar reactions to when Ms. Marvel released, and that one was instead well, I want to see how she takes on Thanos in Endgame. I want to see how she's that powerful. So they were only seeing it to kind of familiarize themselves, I guess, with the character. And comparing that to something like Godzilla, where you do wait 5 minutes on a franchise that is huge, but it's also a reboot and you're trying to continue and build off of this reboot. And I'm sure a part of that too is them retooling after the first one, where people were saying there wasn't enough monsters. Well, the sequel gave us tons of it, and now they were saying that there was too much of that and not enough human development.
No, there was too much humans. All I needed was that whatever guy who was in love with Godzilla. That's all I needed in that whole movie.
Kevin Sujihara?
Yeah, he was perfect. He's like, goodbye, my friend.
Boyfriend. I mean, friend.
Whatever. He was fine.
Well, we got one more. I think they said they were planning on doing more after Kong versus Godzilla, but I think that's going to be the last one unless this performs really, really well.
Right.
But as we know, Warner Brothers is doing yet more retooling with this one due to the box office returns as well as the reviews, unfortunately. But I guess we'll find out when the third one comes out as to whether or not there is going to be more to it, or if they're just going to put everything that was planned in the future into this final part to what will then be a trilogy.
But a movie that's coming out relatively soon that we know is going to be successful.
1 month away. 1 month away.
We know it's going to be successful, but we're not the only ones estimating this. According to boxoffice.com, Todd Phillips' Joker film is set to open, estimated open, right, at $175 million, which would top this year's Shazam film.
On that fucking budget, the Joker budget, and you're making $175 million on estimates through boxoffice.com, that is embarrassing for Shazam and for any of the other superhero movies that had an overblown budget that didn't make even this much. That's a great opening for this indie DC film.
So some things that they're factoring into it. I mean, I know they're factoring the talent, the script, how the trailer gave us chills.
Hell yeah.
But they're saying they're factoring in other successful R-rated comic book films like Logan and Deadpool.
I think that's a reach. I mean, I think the same people that did Forbes' article also did the estimates and said, I think this is why.
Well, I mean, they're both R-rated. It's the same.
We blame Jurassic World for those, and now we blame Deadpool and Logan for the success of Joker.
Yes, perfect. That's it.
I think it's just people trying to find patterns in things like, well, what other R-rated things are there?
Right. Trying to develop patterns where there are none, but that's fine.
Yeah, the Joker movie is set to come out in a month, October 4th, 2019. Well, over a month now, but October 4th, 2019, we're pretty much almost in September. The movie itself is rumored to get another trailer at the end of this month, which should be the final one before it releases. I don't think it's needed. Obviously, you and I are sold on it. We don't have to watch it.
Right.
We may for the purpose of the podcast, but anyone else out there, if you're known to bitch in the past about a Joker or a trailer showing way too much, then this is probably one, if you're already sold on Joker, that you want to avoid.
Right.
That's your heads up. That's your warning. I think you're right in saying that it's not because of Logan or Deadpool, which are proven R-rated comic book adaptations. I think it is because of the positive reception to the trailer, the talent behind it, not only in the movie itself, you got Robert De Niro in the goddamn thing and Joaquin Phoenix, but also you got Todd Phillips, who is very passionate about this project. And the script itself, which thanks to someone out there, I'm obviously not going to name who that person or those people were, but I did get a hold of the Joker script, and we don't know how finalized this script actually is, or if we already know that they retooled the script as they were shooting. So they were kind of rewriting things a little bit as far as what Joaquin felt he could add to the characters. So there's going to be changes between this and what we see in October, but the skeleton of the movie, the beats, the plot points, all of that, I let the script sit for maybe a day and I had no will. And I started reading it. I'm like, why don't I read a little bit of this? And then I just couldn't stop because the story did hook me and I needed to see where it all went and how this dive into madness, this society had created this environment for Arthur Fleck.
So what you're telling me is you spoiled the movie for yourself.
I did, 100%.
And what is it that you're always telling me I shouldn't do? And that's what, spoil things for myself?
Yeah, I'm shocked that we went the opposite here. How come you're not tempted to read the script?
Because I'm like, the whole experience is the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to read the script and then I'm going to know what happens in the movie, and now my emotions aren't going to be as genuine. So
that's true.
Wait.
That's one thing that now that I've read the script, I know there is a twist somewhat in the movie that I'm like, oh shit, like I would have liked to have wondered as I watched it halfway through, like, is that really true? Is that really what we're going to get? And whatever that outcome is, I'm like, all right, well, I know whether it's true or not. And by the time I watch it, that won't hit me as hard. That all out of the way, though, I read the script, I read the dialogue, and I read the plot points. I am not exposed to any camera directing. I'm not exposed to the talent behind his performance or everyone else around him. I'm only imagining and putting together the pieces from the trailer that I saw. And it's like, all right, that makes sense. I see why he's holding that, and that. But that still doesn't give me a full picture at all on what this movie will be. I think I'm going to digest it on a whole different level, probably deeper on the first watch than if I had seen it twice or only watched it the first time. And even seeing his performance during these beats is going to still resonate very hard with me.
Do you write for Forbes?
Well, the reason is I also read the script for Deadpool 2 and Deadpool 1, which are also R-rated movies.
You're just trying to justify spoiling it for yourself. Like, well, I didn't really spoil it.
Yeah, both you and Maceo told me, don't read the script, watch the movie first, and then. But then I also figured, then why do I have the script ahead of time? Like, why did I ask for it?
So that you could watch it because you were so excited, and I get that. But then you could have like read it right after you watched it, and then when you saw it the second time, you would have gotten even more out of it.
Well, I've been messing with like my coworkers,
with everyone.
With you, and that's the best part. It's like, oh, I read the Joker script. How do you feel about Harley Quinn? Oh, I like her. Oh, interesting. Why is she in it? What? No, I didn't. What am I saying? Like, I'll just say things that clearly aren't true that aren't going to be in the movie. Right. Or like, oh, you like Barbara Gordon? Yeah, how do you think she would react to an older Joker if she were a little girl in this timeline? Oh, I don't know. We haven't really seen that, had we? No. Maybe we will soon. Like little things like that are never going to happen.
Right.
And it's kind of the fun part about it, I guess.
Boy. I know, you kept doing that to me. And like at this point in our marriage and relationship, I'm just like, okay. If I don't give you ammunition, then you stop.
Here's one thing that I did see on Twitter, and it divided the DC fan base a little bit. Do you consider the Joker movie to be a comic book film?
Yes.
Yes, and why?
So it is a character study, right? Obviously, because we're deep diving into who the Joker is and why he is this way and etc.
This version, yeah.
This version, but it's still based off of a comic book. So yes, it's a comic book movie.
It's inspired by a comic.
Right.
I 100% agree as well. And I know some people might say, well, I was inspired by Batman, so I wrote this Zorro movie or whatever. But it's got to have some beats that are taken or some plot points that are taken from a comic book. And this one, as we know already, has some elements of the Killing Joke in there, such as him trying to be a comedian. And that's obviously a part of this movie, as we saw in the trailer. So it is heavily inspired by several Joker stories and Batman stories as well. I would absolutely as well consider it a comic book movie. And I think the reason why people were debating on it was that if you considered a comic book movie, it might be taken less seriously, is what I was seeing. I think we're far past that. We've seen legitimate comic-based movies that are good films.
I think to the general audience, the term comic book movies, they immediately go to the Marvel movies, right? You immediately go to movies that are more action-based, easy to digest, and more lighthearted, right? That's what it's become to the general audience. So I think that's maybe more the reason that people are trying to hesitate calling this a comic book movie, because to the general audience, it won't be. You know, to us, yes, we know all these elements of the Joker. We've read the comic books up to this point, but a lot of people have only seen the movies. So they're going to watch this and they're going to be like, well, why was that so depressing? That's not a comic book movie.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit too dark, too heavy, too real for a lot of people, and it's not going to be what they expect out of their regular superhero movies. I think it's closer to, we're making these connections, but it is closer to Logan than it would be to, I think, any of the other superhero or comic book movies out there, at least up to this point. And even then, it's kind of a reach because Logan has some heavy action in it. There's a lot of sci-fi and mutant action that the Joker simply does not have.
And Hugh Jackman.
And it has Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, I agree. It is definitely a comic book movie. And the other thing I wanted to touch on with the Joker movie before we move on is other people have read the same script, other bloggers and people who are going to be reviewing the movie, and they're already sharpening their knives. I've been seeing some people like, if this is the script, it's going to be shit and all this other stuff. And the opposite too, people saying this is going to be amazing if this is the actual script that we're seeing and that we're reading. Any negative reviews that we're going to see is going to focus on the tone, the negativity, the darkness of this script. And it's not going to be, they're going to call it for a movie called Joker and being about a joking clown. It's not very joking at all. It's not very light. That same argument that we've gotten is going to continue here.
Right.
And I've seen one of the things of, well, I hope this isn't just a movie of, or a story of, well, the world screwed me, so this is why I'm bad. And it's like, what do you think this, and even, you can minimize any fucking plot into anything and just say, well, I hope that it's not
a bad guy trying to take over the world again.
Yeah, I hope The Fountain isn't just about a guy trying to deal with death. It's like, no shit. Like every fucking thing can be minimized, you idiots.
Right.
So it's how you unfold that, how you tell the story and the richness of the performances. All of that is going to be in play when you watch the Joker movie. And keep that in mind. I mean, any general audience member, I think, is going to feel either... they're going to feel that maybe it's pretentious, possibly, even though the script is fairly simple. You can follow what happens. There's a couple of moments here and there that are meant to be symbolic, but otherwise it's not and cut to black and that's the end and what the hell happened. It's not that hyper indie.
Right.
It'll be fascinating to see exactly how this lands with a lot of people, and I'm sure we'll have tons to say about it on that day.
We'll have to do an entire podcast just about this movie.
So. I think so.
You're so ready. You're like, yes, more podcasts. Next, we're going to transition on over into the print side of the comic world. Last week, Diamond Comic Distributor changed its rules on which books can be sold at midnight by comic shops.
So this affects a minimal portion of comic stores out there, but I still thought it was worth talking about. But to avoid customer and store confusion, all products and comics set to release on that Wednesday can now be sold at midnight. It used to be that specific approved publisher titles were the only ones that could be sold that day. So sometimes, for example, for Avengers vs. X-Men, which is the last time our store did a midnight release, and it was many years ago, it was only that book and I believe the Marvel pickups that could be bought. And people were like, well, can I get the rest of my books too? And we're like, no, we can't sell them until tomorrow when we open. So they're like, well, I guess I'll just come back tomorrow or next week. Right. So it's just silly because when anyone does a midnight release, like at GameStop, when we used to do those, any game coming out the next day, you can also buy along with the Madden launch or the Call of Duty midnight, all of those. And I was kind of shocked. I'm like, in all these years, we still haven't done the all midnight releases, the full midnight. Because after that Avengers vs. X-Men launch, we were like, yeah, never again. We saw the same Wednesday people that we'd see anyway.
Right.
Except we were open longer hours, more man hours. It was a loss of money. It wasn't generating more sales. It's just the same people you're going to see tomorrow anyway. So now that it opens it up to everyone being able to buy whatever books launch tomorrow, it's a little bit better. I still don't see it as a contributing factor. It's not like my store being open at midnight and then my competitor, or me not being open and then my competitor being open at midnight, that people are going to go, well, I better go over there. All the subscribers know their books are going to be on hold.
Right.
The only people that it might benefit are going to be the speculators that want to make sure that they get their whatever. Oh, tomorrow's issue has a first appearance. I better go to that midnight launch, get that book, and then I'll go back to my store and I'll try to get another copy. That's the only people that it's really going to help. And again, I don't see a lot of comic shops doing midnight launches anyway. So if you do, if you're out there and you shop at a store that does them, be aware that you are now able to pick up everything and not just the 1 or 2 titles.
I feel like the demographic there in the comic world for a midnight launch versus a GameStop midnight launch is totally different, though. Like, no middle-aged person is going to their comic shop to pick up a book to go home and read it at 12:30 in the morning. Nobody. We're not even awake at 12:30 in the morning, right? Whereas GameStop, yeah, you're going to pick up the game, you're going to play Call of Duty for the next 48 hours, and then you might die. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very different. Maybe if you're very active online and you want to be up to date with the people on the forums or people on Twitter and really discuss the title. Otherwise, yeah, it's a small group of people. And,
right.
Good for anyone that does go to every single one that your store does or goes to and have fun. Continuing on the comic book news, though, superstar artist Greg Capullo tweeted out about his contract publisher re-signing him.
Superstar, not super nerd, which is what you are this week. I had to throw that back in there just to remind you. We do have a quote here. Quote, in other news, I just signed a new contract with DC and am again teaming up with Scott Snyder to produce our biggest adventure yet. End quote.
This kind of explains that episode we released like 2 months ago of Greg Capullo at MegaCon, and he was strongly teasing like, well, I'd like to draw Ghost Rider, I'd like to do some Marvel work, some Captain America, I've always been a Marvel guy, and it's like, all right, well, this makes sense. There were some contract negotiations going on.
Right.
Like, you know what, it's that Marvel side is looking kind of nice now, unless you add another 0 to that. I mean, they might be able to pay me that. And now it's like, oh yeah, we're going to do more DC.
I'll draw
it's gonna be
shitty
great.
stories, but whatever.
Since last year, Scott Snyder has talked about a sequel to his and Capullo's 2017/2018 DC event, Dark Knight's Metal.
In other news, that was a lame story, so that will not continue.
I can't. If they do foil covers again, I'm all in.
Yeah.
Snyder said at 2018's Comic-Con, quote, the Omega, Titans, Barbados, The Forge, it's all coming back. Everything you read, our goal is to reward. End quote.
No. Just no. Unsign his contract if that's what you guys are going to be doing.
See, I'm going ka-ching. Can't wait for that Dark Knight's Metal 2.
Just print those foil covers in gold.
Put an extra $1 on that cover price. It'll sell. I got signed by Marvel.
You become like the plantation owner, like, making your money.
I think it's very clear that it's that sequel to Dark Knight's Metal that he's talking about, their biggest event yet. I don't think it's another Batman story. I think they were serious in saying that Last Night on Earth is their coupled last Batman story. I could see either one separating or working on different Batman stuff. I know a lot of people keep telling him, like, we want to see a Swamp Thing story drawn by Capullo.
Oof.
And I know he had a lot of fun drawing the character in Dark Knight's Metal. So.
Yeah, but, like, he would, listen, there's too much detail in that Swamp Thing. That man would spend, like, 40 years on one page.
Absolutely he would. And he'd happily do it. He's insane.
But we can't do that to him. That is immorally wrong of us.
I also do want to see, maybe if they team up on a Swamp Thing story, because Scott has written Swamp Thing before, get his brother Greg on there and get a huge Swamp Thing story going. And I don't know if that's hard to justify for the Dio and them to be like, well, that's going to be an expensive book to produce because you guys are superstars. Could you really bring the sales along with it?
Yeah, especially with the Swamp Thing TV show right now. Yeah.
I guess we'll see. I guess we'll find out. I know Justice League Dark hasn't gotten a boost because Swamp Thing's on the team, so I'm not too sure. It'd be tough to do.
Nobody cares about the rest of them. But if
I like Detective Chimp. I like Man Bat.
If I had just Swamp Thing, yeah, I'd be all about it. But these Justice League Dark, nobody cares about them.
That does wrap up our news stories for this week. During our Brokehead block, I did watch 2 specials. I got the Rocco's Modern Life special that I'm going to talk about, and also Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
No.
But first, let's head into our Patreon shoutouts and then our comic book highlight.
This is a giant Patreon shout out week. Next week, we're going to have a very special podcast for you. So we wanted to make sure that you all got your shout outs this week. So we're going to kick it off with Scott, whose Twitter handle is at LazyGamingGuys or at Pandanime, who went to MetroCon and got to go to Game Time in Tampa.
Fellow Broquette and also a viewer of Lazy Gaming Guys, Jared, actually met them at Tampa at Game Time, and they played a bunch of arcade games.
Cool.
They did the hammer strength thing.
Yeah.
To which Julian was very impressed with Jared's arm muscles. So that's another Lazy Gaming Guys member. But overall, it looks like they all had a lot of fun at Game Time and the MetroCon.
Next on the list, we have Jose, whose Instagram is at Kingdom T-shirt.
Jost raised money for the Rheumatoid Arthritis Foundation for his birthday.
That's wonderful.
Thank you very much, Jost. Great cause to contribute to using your birthday in your event.
Next up, we have at Innsmouth_Tide.
The biggest Swamp Thing brokehead out there. He tweeted out, quote, 60-hour work week, raising a 3-year-old and 2-month-old. 2 toilets removed and installed. Ready for Wednesday. End quote. He's always looking forward to New Comic Book Day every single week.
Ugh, how's he have the time?
He's getting it done. How do we have the time for what we do now?
I'm tired just reading that tweet. I'm like, oh, man.
That's true. Yeah, we don't have another baby that we're also...
Right. No.
It's rough.
No, somebody asked me the other day, they're like, are you going to have another one? And I laughed in their face. And they're like, really? You don't? I was like, have one and then talk to me.
There you go. Next shout out goes out to Elizabeth at EP Lifts on Twitter.
Elizabeth tweeted, quote, blueberry picking yesterday means blueberries and cream in the form of 1% milk for breakfast. Gotta love August. Hashtag joys of summer, end quote.
That sounds delicious. Also posted up a picture, a close-up of the blueberries.
Yum.
We got to go picking for those. I don't know if they have that locally.
Yeah, they do.
I think here you just do oranges.
No, there's not even orange picking anywhere. There's actually a blueberry farm like 15 minutes away. We could
nice.
We could just go pick blueberries.
I think Leo would like it.
Oh, yeah, he would love it.
Next shout out goes out to Joshua T on Twitter at Drips1963.
Thank you so much, Joshua, for your support. It all helps make the show what it is.
We also have Nick F on Twitter at Jersey Whisperer and at Nick's Nerd News 1.
He tweeted, quote, going out to mow the lawn and I just realized how much I miss at Edumacation Andy and at that Kevin Smith for hashtag Edumacation. I used to feel so smart doing yard work, end quote.
I've heard a couple of episodes of Edumacation, and I know Nick is a huge Kevin Smith and Smodcast fan, but I guess they stopped doing the show a little while ago. I know it was always Edumacation Andy just educating Kevin, and Kevin being like the ignorant one. Kind of a fun show, so I'm sure Nick will find, maybe there'll be a return of that, but I think Edumacation Andy has a different podcast he's doing. I'm not too sure, but hopefully Nick finds something else that will help him feel edumacated.
Next on the list, we have Julian W., whose Twitter handle is at Kage023 or at Lazy Gaming Guys.
He made it known on their Discord that there are no question limits for their podcast, Breakfast with the Lazy Gaming Guys. So if you ever have a video game question that you want answered on their podcast, make sure to send it over to them.
Oh, it has to be like video game related?
They have answered other things.
Like really awkward questions? Yes.
Submit it. I mean, it'll at least make them sigh. Julian will sigh at least twice. Next shout out goes out to Christian on Instagram at _man_defeated.
Christian posted great landscape images of Jonestown, Texas.
Quite the photographer. Good job, Christian. Thank you very much for your support.
Next on the list, we have Eric, whose Twitter handle is at EAntonOfficial.
Eric is a big John Taffer fan. He's constantly putting up GIFs of John Taffer. He's judging his own meals and restaurant experiences. And the first one that comes to mind is John Taffer, the great restaurant manager. What's his title?
Bar saver. I don't know.
Yeah, he's the host of Bar Rescue, if you've ever seen that. He just gets upset and saves the bar, kind of like Gordon Ramsay does with Hell's Kitchen. And then obviously the payoff is he owns a portion of the business, and he does this throughout the nation. So the successful businesses will continue to pay him for the rest of their, I guess,
life.
Yeah.
Forever.
But in the meantime, he does an entertaining show where he yells at pretty much everyone, even more than Gordon Ramsay, I would say.
He even yells when he's giving them things.
Yeah.
Like, here you have two-touch POS systems. And I'm like, whoa, John Taffer.
They all feel guilty and bad.
Right, because of their new POS system. And you get my training for the next year. Oh, shit. Okay.
Good taste, Eric. I like it.
And our final shout out this week goes out to Renee, whose Twitter handle is @Yugi's Pokemon.
He got his shiny Totodile in less than 200 soft resets. Took no fucking time.
What's a soft reset?
So anytime you start the game with your starters, and let's say you want to start off with a shiny Bulbasaur, when you get your Pokemon, you got to go through the whole gameplay up until when you get it. And then you receive the Pokemon and you see if it's a shiny, and if not, you do a soft reset. So it basically resets the game without you having to turn it off and turn it on. It just goes back to the menu and you go through it all over again.
Ugh.
So less than 200 soft resets, and he was able to get that shiny Totodile. And that's awesome because the odds of that are pretty low. So in less than 200, that's amazing.
I'm tired just thinking about all those resets.
I've seen him stream when he does the soft resets going shiny hunting, and that's where he was listening to our podcast as he was streaming.
Oh, that's crazy. I remember I did reset a bunch of times once because I wanted a female Pokemon because I was a girl, so my Pokemon had to be a girl too, and I did eventually get one.
I don't know what the ratio is, but it's kind of bizarre how it's larger. Maybe it depends on the Pokemon, because I know some have a larger female to male ratio.
Usually the starters are like almost always male when you get them.
It's bizarre. I figured it would kind of match what you are, maybe a 30% to 70.
No, not in my experience, but what the fuck do I know? I don't know. I was like 9.
So thank you all so much for your support this week and all of our Patreon backers for the month. If you too would like your shout out, head on over to patreon.com/thereasonsimBroke for just $1 a month. Equals out to 25 cents an episode. You too can get your shout out.
All that money just goes right back into the podcast to help with everything. Like I said, it helps make the show what it is. But of course, we will always be free. The best thing you can do is reach out to us on Twitter, ask us questions. No questions are off limits. Can I throw that out there, there too? Let your friends know about us, right? That's how word about the show spreads.
And don't forget, if you want to be heard on the podcast, you can leave us a voicemail at speakpipe.com/thereasonsimbroke. There is a link in the description of today's episode. And of course, this month's question, courtesy of @DCUFanFam's donation, we are giving away a digital copy of the Shazam movie. We just ask, what's your all-time favorite scene in the DC Extended Universe and why? In 90 seconds or less, submit that voicemail.
You have until August 25th, so 2 more weeks? Just about 2 more weeks?
About a week, I would say, yeah.
Oh, okay. Whatever. I'm bad with math. Anyway, submit that, send it over, and you can be entered to win your digital copy of the Shazam movie.
Let's head into our comic book highlight for the week.
As we said in the very beginning, our highlight is No One Left to Fight #2.
This is written by Aubrey Sitterson with art and colors by Fico Ossio.
That's a pretty good colorist name.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's pronounced Ficio. Not too sure.
No, because there's not 2 C's. If there were 2 C's, it would be.
So how you feeling 2 issues in on Dragon Ball Z, the comic book?
They want you to feel... I think this book is written for all the people who don't like Vegeta because they just want you to like Vegeta.
It's definitely a Vegeta fan.
Yeah.
For sure.
100%. I mean, we should all be Vegeta fans.
So while it is not Vegeta, at what point did you immediately attach yourself to that non-main character that they're kind of surrounding the story with.
The very first moment in the first issue when he was scowling, I was like, there he is. I'm done.
Yeah, they set up this second issue in what kind of already happened in the show, except an alternate take of what if Goku did not have a family, continue training. Vegeta does, I guess, settle down, have a couple of kids, gets married. But in this case, their mutual trainer blames the Vegeta character for being as weak as he is and never defeating their Goku. On you, instead of continuing your training, you decided to fall in love and have kids and stop your training.
Right.
Whereas he is the better student. He is my prime student, the greatest there ever is, and just kind of embarrassing him or trying to embarrass him in front of, not maybe shaming him in front of the other friends and his wife.
But she was shitting on him for like no reason.
Yeah.
No reason at all. Like, she is Akira Toriyama who hates Vegeta and just wants to shit on him for no reason.
And I like that the writers built him up, and you get that flashback of he's happy with his family and with his kids.
Course.
And at the same time, he's also like, fuck this. I'll still fight him. I'll fight you. And I'll give it my goddamn best. And he's convinced that he can defeat all of these fucking characters.
Well, and that's one of the greatest things about Vegeta in the show, right? Is because he is from a warrior race, right? He does want to fight, but through all this, he learns that his family and the people who are close to him are his greatest asset. They're what ultimately give him strength. And you can definitely see that touched on in Dragon Ball Z, the comic book.
Do you feel like we're getting a shift of we're not following our Goku, or do you think we're getting both characters? Because at the end, it seems like they're starting to unravel some of this Goku character story in which now he's being tempted by letting his fighting go to maybe take a slight backseat.
I definitely think that we're seeing both characters pretty equally, and I think that will continue forward in that trend. The Vegeta moments just stand out more because we like him so much.
Yeah.
So those moments definitely stand out. And the Goku character, and it's really interesting to see, right? Because they talk about how great he is and how he's, this perfect fighter and saved the world multiple times and blah, 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 blah. But he's really not that cool of a guy or that interesting of a character. Again, how Goku is in Dragon Ball Z, but you can see how different just the perspective of the writer makes on how the audience perceives them. And so that's what we see. We do see a moment at the end, right, where this woman's like, I'm going to seduce you, Goku. And she's in this weird pom-pom thing. I don't even know. So we'll see where that goes moving forward. I mean, maybe he ends up settling down with a family too. And then how does that change crabby old bitch lady? I don't know.
She ends up being the final boss, and they both team up to fight her. I do gotta give credit as well, massive credit to Fico Osio for the amazing use of color in this. A lot of pink and oranges and yellows, which is not very common for this kind of style or these kinds of comics or even in anime. So it's got a very unique look when you're reading it. And whatever they end up doing next, I will probably follow just based on the artwork alone.
But with that, we do wrap up the standard portion of our podcast. Moving forward, we have the Broquette block. That's what happened with Daniel and I this week.
And in case you missed it, one of the biggest things, it is finally confirmed for us this year.
Hashtag confirmed.
For the third year in a row, the Broquette Corps came forward and voted to nominate us for the 2019 Podcast Awards under Games and Hobbies.
Woo-hoo.
Honestly, it is an amazing thing to see that the Corps are still believe in the show, love the show enough to nominate us for the third year, that they weren't discouraged by the fact that, we didn't win in the last 2 years, yet it's a win in that we were nominated for now 3 years in a row. So at this point, it goes into the select voter period until about mid-September, and then late September is when they'll do an announcement of the winners via a live stream. That being said, last year and the year before that's winner is also nominated for this year. So congrats to them too. It's tough competition, just like last year. You even have the Polygon show on there. So they got nominated again this year. The competition is stiff. I know Scott from Lazy Gaming Guys said that he feels that this is going to be the year.
Third time's the charm.
We shall see. That's what they say, isn't it? What did they say for the fourth? Because I feel like I need to mentally prepare myself just in case.
Fuck it, the fourth time.
So we'll find out, and it's just great to be nominated again this year, and good to know that we are putting out something that the Brokehead Core are enjoying, and a lot of the same members that voted for the last couple of years and that have been there since the beginning voted this year. So honestly, we really appreciate it. Whether you joined us just this week or you've been listening since 2012, it is an amazing gift from all of you to us. And if we end up winning, it's a win for everyone.
But that was our biggest news from the week. Otherwise, on my end of things, just a standard week, right? Going to work. Our son is a little asshole. He is. He's hitting terrible twos. I texted. So my best friend Sam, her son is 3 weeks older than Leo. So we're both kind of like in the same stage of things. I texted her today and I'm like, I'm dropping him at a fire station. I'm done.
Is that where kids get like...
Yeah, that's where you should take your kid when you're done with them.
I didn't know that.
Station. And so then she just laughs and she's like, what is he doing? And so I told her, like, he got mad because he was biting a blanket. He was biting my mom's $80 blanket. So I took it away from him and he just screamed to the top of his lungs. We were at my parents' house. So I said, okay, we're done. So I picked him up and I just brought him home, right? Because he's not going to scream at their house, and right, they're off of work, they want to relax. And so I set him down in our house, and then he screamed to the top of his lungs again. And I was like, I can't. And I walked in the other room, and he came in crying and hugging me like, I'm sorry, Mom.
I'm two.
It was a difficult day.
At least you're over your cold, though.
Yes.
Would have been tougher to be sick and then deal with today.
Oh, man, it would have been tough. Yeah, I'm back to like 98%, right? I'm still a little tired. I don't know if you can hear my voice isn't as strong as it was. Like, we're near the end of the show and my voice is like, what are you doing to me? So yeah, pretty much over the cold. Work was pretty mild this week, all things considered. So it was a good week. Yeah.
One of the days that you were sick, I did wake up with a sore throat, and I'm like, well, one of us gets it. The next one has to get it like a week later. But my body went, just kidding. And I'm like,
JK.
Oh, no, fucking body.
Wow,
You're fucking
thanks.
messing with me. He's like, Daniel.
Well, I did also like pump you full of tea and water that day. So
yeah, and that definitely helped. I did get around to watching the Rocco's Modern Life Static Cling special, which I know you weren't interested in at all. But it's a 45-minute special. It's on Netflix right now. You know, trying to give you a spoiler-free review of it, which there's not a massive plot to it. But the two biggest things that I do want to talk about is the fact that there is that controversy about the trans character, and it was trending on Twitter, and people saying, keep your modern politics out of my childhood cartoons. And it's like, that's kind of interesting. And then I watched the special, and that all makes sense. Like, they anticipated that backlash, and the plot is about a cartoon coming back, the Fatheads. If you're a longtime Rocco watcher, you know about the Fatheads, and then how it's not quite the same as what they want. There's a whole message here about nostalgia is nonsense. Nostalgia can skew your perspective, and it could also cause you to miss out on a lot of special things happening today, and a lot of things that are happening in the world, things that have changed over time that are no less valuable because they're different. And that all was anticipated in the creator's construction of this story, including the backlash. And if you watch the special, then it addresses all of that too. So it's kind of smart in that way. It didn't lose its clever plot, I guess, and even though, it can be about these goofy characters, but there's a lot of messages to this. You could even say that the RECYCLE episode, the recycling one, your modern there's been fucking modern politics in the fucking Rocco show. At that time, those were, political things. Those were controversial things. And in this one, it's even the community, LGBTQ community, it was like, they handled it well. And that's always a dicey thing because, if you overfocus on it, then it becomes a thing. If you don't, I think if you underplay it right now is the better thing to do, and that's the route they went in with the cartoon. And of course, it still ended up being a thing, but in the cartoon itself, in the plot, it's a whatever nonsense thing.
Well, it's funny that they have this backlash, right? Because that means they just didn't really watch the movie.
Right.
Because if they'd watched the movie, then they would have been like, oh, like, I'm upset about this, but I shouldn't be because of X, Y, and Z.
And it's also a part of the story addressing your own notions of why you're upset. Pretty clever. It's pretty amazing. So I do recommend watching it because it retains all the same animation, which I was really happy about. I was nervous about them updating it too much and it wouldn't look like the old show, or even CGIing it. And even that's addressed in when they're doing the Fatheads reunion. So it all goes into the fact that Rocco has been off the air for many years. And the humor's still there. There's references, old gags that come back in the special. There is no alluding to there being more. But I do hope that this does get enough numbers to where either one, it warrants another special, or two, that at least the old episodes get hosted on Netflix for streaming. And that's the other thing that people have now been asking. Like, yeah, I saw the special. Can you now get the show on there? Which I thought was kind of interesting that they didn't couple that together, because Netflix does tend to do that, like they did with Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, new season and all the old episodes. They didn't do it in this case, so hopefully that does lead to the older seasons going on there.
You also watched another movie without me this week because I was not seeing that shit.
That's right. A little too spooky for you, even though it is Guillermo del Toro.
Too spooky. It's not really Guillermo. He just produced it.
He did produce it, but I was watching some behind the scenes of the monsters that when they did the costumes, and it's Guillermo like on there like messing with the costumes.
Of course,
like, oh,
and they were like, Guillermo, get off the set. And he's like, let me, and he breaks something. He's like, oh no, another million.
It was cool how invested he was in like the costumes and the creatures, and I guess the production of it. I know he helped write part of the plot, and then you had the screenwriters and everything else in there. I will say,
we didn't even say what the movie was.
Scary Movies to Tell in the Dark.
There you go.
That's what it is. Based, of course, on those graphic novels or novels as kids.
Hated those things.
What really made them interesting were the drawings. The sketches and the paintings and the ink work all complemented that particular story so well that as a kid, it's like, this is kind of gory and intense, even just the illustrations alone, for it to be a children's book from the 80s. And maybe it's because it's a product of the 80s. And I know it was banned in several schools in the 90s at one point. They tried to republish it with completely new artwork where it wasn't as scary, and people fucking hated it. Sales plummeted. They weren't about it. They brought it back. Now when you find the trilogy, it says with original artwork, because it has to say that, because you don't want to buy the inferior version of Scary Stories. So I hear that there's also going to be a fourth book, because there's a movie now, and why not? Capitalize on the popularity of it. There's another book on its way, which makes me want to pick up the trilogy and the upcoming story. The movie itself, to give kind of a mini review of it, if you've seen the Goosebumps movie with Jack Black, in which all the stories are kind of interwoven into the real world, it sort of works out in that way, which these different stories that we're familiar with do come to life based on this haunted book or this haunted character. But it's not that the stories are a story in it. Instead, it's kind of interwoven into it as being a sort of haunted notebook or a ghost that brings these stories to life. It's more like Death Note, where you write down how someone gets killed and then it happens. That's what they do in this story. And that's where you get these creatures from the classic books. And that's kind of how they come to life, and they show up they're killing off these kids. I don't know if it's PG. It's got to be PG-13, because it's very careful not to get too bloody or gory, but with the intense imagery and the death of some of these kids and the jump scares, I'm like, this is pushing that PG-13 rating. I will say that the story was the weakest part of it, because it was the only way to bring these designs to life was to have this kind of plot. But the performance from the kids was amazing. They were funny, they were hilarious, and they were genuine. You really believe that they were scared, and it's very easy to have a teenager.
Because they were like real puppets.
It's easy to have teenagers or kids underact or completely mess it up, and they were all amazing, amazing actors. Special effects were incredible, because you have actual people in costumes And some of it, you're like, that might be CG. And instead, it's someone in a costume, and then they enhance parts of it with CG. So where you can't have like a empty skull, like, yeah, they'll have like the green screen on the behind the eyeball, in front of the eyeball, and then they'll just have darkness. And even for the toe that's supposed to be missing in one of the monsters, they had the green screen on the toe, and they're like, yeah, you got to walk there, and we'll just edit it in post. They had all of these things built in real life, and they look incredible. They had a contortionist suit up in costume for one of those monsters, so you think, oh, that's CGI with all the twisting, and it's like, no, they actually had to hire someone that did all of those things, and then they filmed it, and it's on the fucking big screen, and it looks amazing. And I think those two portions are the strongest because they shine so brightly that the story took a real far back seat to everything else.
Who was Dougie Jones in this movie?
I'm surprised Dougie Jones was not in the fucking movie because he could have been any one of these goddamn monsters.
He probably was, and we just don't know it. He's just that good. He
might have been busy with, what was he fucking, with Star Trek, of course.
Oh, okay.
He might have been busy with that. All
right, maybe.
But I would have loved to see Doug Jones as any one of these guys. Probably the missing toe monster would have been the one because it's a skinny character.
Right.
But maybe they needed someone even skinnier than Dougie to do
Nobody's
the role.
Skinnier than Dougie.
Well, the guy they got has a condition in which, he's like really skinny, so that's what they got. But otherwise, I would have loved to have seen him, and I don't think anyone would have complained. They went out of their way to make sure that the makeup fit the pages, the artwork. So you can even see where they were holding up they took pictures of the monster, and they're like, all right, now they photoshopped it over the drawing and transparent it, and they're like, oh, we need a crack here. Like, they got really specific and made sure it matched the drawings exactly. And I think that's a lot of Guillermo too, going on there and visiting the sets and saying, make sure it's like this and like that. And the quality was absolutely there. It is a visual feast. It's not over CGI'd because there are costumes, and the acting is awesome. It's just a story that unfortunately is kind of pretty standard for these kinds of haunted house ghosts haunting, like, I'm a ghost that's been wronged in the past and you got to fix it, that kind of bit that we've seen.
I'm already scared.
You would have been, it relies, I will say that, it relies a little too heavily on the jump scares.
Yeah, and I told you I was going to be scared, and you thought that I was crazy, and I was like, no, go see this one without me because I knew. And then you were telling me about it like briefly, right? Surface level, and I was already scared.
The one thing I would have changed in the construction of it would have been to break it up each into different movies, like different stories into the movie. So one big block of movies, but then it's like a, hour and a half long special of 4 episodes. And then each one could have been one of those stories from the classic book, and you still could have had these same monsters in there. And I don't know if they felt that maybe there wasn't enough story to flesh it out, but I think they could have done it, especially with someone like Guillermo there behind the story. They could have made it work. It did set it up for a sequel, though, so if it does well enough, and I hope it does, it turns out the budget wasn't as big as we thought, even though it is Guillermo. And I don't know if it's because he didn't direct it. I'm sure that saved a shit ton of money. Yeah. But hopefully it did well enough to have something else in the future.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I don't know if we touched on it last week, but the store that I managed, the comic shop, hit its 2-year anniversary this past weekend. So that was going on for my week, because we had gone to the wedding reception the night before, and then I got up and had to do the 2-year anniversary the next day. But it was amazing to see the longtime shoppers that have been there since the beginning, and then our newer customers, and also brand new faces that are like there for the first time, and they're seeing like, holy shit, like it's busy in here, and there's stuff going on, and there's free comics, and there's D&D, and there's local artists signing and doing drawings. That it was an event, and it was something that, while it wasn't as big as last year's anniversary, a lot of that is because it was on a Sunday and not on a Saturday.
Right.
Less hours in the day, and I think that's mainly what it is.
In the work day.
They're both weekends, though, Saturday and Sunday. But you're saying that our actual hours?
Yeah, because you said less hours in the day, but all days have the same number of hours. I'm just being facetious.
I see what you're saying.
I'm just being an ass.
So that probably contributed to a lot of it. And even still, like, it was, I think it ended up being our 4th best week since the store opened. So it's sales are absolutely there. It gets busier and busier every month, it seems like, and just got to keep building on that momentum and keep figuring out ways to carry different product. And help people find the books that they need a little bit easier. Subscribers especially is another one where it's like, well, I haven't read House of X or Powers of X. However, I've heard nothing but good things. And that kind of helps that confidence level. Or no, I haven't heard great things about it. You got to just be honest with your customer base, because otherwise they won't trust you the next time they ask you for a recommendation. And it's just a sign of 2 years going strong. This is our best year. We're having strong weeks back to back. It's not just because we had an anniversary. It's just consistent sales. And once again, a sign that things are being done right on some level. So it's confirmation of that.
You do things right on a lot of levels. You know, I have to commend you because you put in so many hours and you research ways to bring in more customers and how to use social media to do that. And you're doing a lot of things that others in the company aren't necessarily doing. And it shows, right? I don't think you guys would be as successful as you are without you there helping to run things.
Yeah, that can be a little frustrating too, because there's things that I do that have clear results, like the new comic book day videos I do on Tuesday nights, or setting up the final order cutoff variants. Like that alone garners like tons of books that get pre-ordered every single week. And if every store did that and set that up on their Facebook page, they would profit even more. And it's little things like that that I've shown to other stores in the company, like, hey, you know, the other store for the other owner, it's like, do a live stream, like get some books out there. And it's such an easy thing to do that obviously has an effect on your sales, but it just doesn't get done because of time or constraints. And I get that. Like the other thing I would like to do for the store is having some kind of book club that meets once a month that you can tie in with coupons. And we just haven't hammered our details, or we also don't have the man hours to do this because it's me and two part-timers and then the owner. So it's tough. And then obviously having, maybe even doing a podcast for just the shop that people can also tune into to get to know the people behind the counter a little bit better, but also to have a discussion about these comics. But that's another thing that would be hours out of my fucking week to do. So there's just not enough time in a week, especially with our personal lives. And at some point you just have to, build on what you're already doing and let that kind of grow from there. But otherwise, it's never going to be enough. You just got to celebrate the victories you do have. And as my boss said, he referenced something I said of like, oh man, it wasn't as good as last year's. And he's like, the glass is always half full or half empty, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah. half empty.
So you got to view it as, no, this is good. It's a good week. It's great. It's awesome. So got to get in that mindset.
Mindset is everything.
Yeah. Anything else you want to touch on with your week before we sign off?
No, that's it. I think I'm good.
Yeah, that'll do it for me as well. Huge thanks again, Brocat Core, for everything for the last, since 2012, tuning in every single week, and also for the podcast awards. And we hope that we are bringing you something that you do feel confident enough to vote on for the podcast awards. And clearly you have once again. So thank you so much for tuning in to the 2019 Podcast Awards nominated podcast, The Reasons I'm Broke. If you want to follow us, I am at Reasons I'm Broke on Twitter.
I'm at Palpa Kelly. Kelly is spelled with an I. I got like 3 more followers this week.
Nice.
So thank you guys for following me.
There are
for my no tweets.
Tons of tweets tons of links in the description of today's episode. So if you're driving, just go on back when you get home or when you get to a stopping point, and you can find all the links on today's episode. But thank you all so much for tuning in. I am Super Nerd Daniel.
And I am Emperor Palpa Kelly.
And Brocat Core. All will be well.